With Doomernat, we're about to watch Jubilee. This is a show where I first saw you. I think you kind of blew up.
That's where everyone first saw me.
Yeah, you're pretty young, right?
Like, yeah, I'm only 20.
So what were you, 19, 18?
19 right there, yeah.
Yeah, and who is this guy you're debating?
That is Mehdi Hasan.
Mehdi Hasan. And okay, for this show, you have to like fight for the seats, or how does it work? It's a little bizarre.
Yeah, you just like the clock runs down, the buzzer goes off, and then like you run to the seat, and then you sit down and you argue with them. And then if the majority of people think that like, oh, you're losing the argument, or they just want to hear someone else,
buzz you out.
They throw up the flags, and if the majority of people have up their flags, well, then you're out and someone else goes.
And it looks like the subject, immigrants overall are good for America. That's the debate.
Yes, and I'm taking the negative.
Okay, let's go ahead and start it. You gotta move so quick.
Oh yeah. Hey, how's it going? I'm Mehdi.
What's going on, man? Nice to meet you. All right, so first, before I start, I need to know what you mean by good. I can talk about the economy, I can talk about culture, I can talk about all those things. I need to know what you mean.
All of them. I'm saying immigrants are good for the economy. They're good for culture. They're good for society. Where's the lower wage?
That's a good point. Lower wages. I think this is absolutely crucial when the left push it. What do? This is why big business loves it, because it brings down wages. If you have, I used to do construction. Construction wages are down because they can go and hire Mexican or Salvadorian immigrants.
That's precisely right. I mean, it's basic common sense. If they'll accept a lower wage, you're bringing in more people to compete with the people already there. Plus the people you're bringing in will accept lower, you're going to hire them.
Yep. Exactly.
So now to be able to compete with them, well, now the people who are there, they have to lower their wages now. So,
yep. You nailed it. So go play it.
Oh, okay. I got you. What do you mean, where's the lower wages?
Where's the lower wages?
Yeah, so you can look at
the basis for saying they're low wages.
Sure. So you can look at like the STEM industry. It's been in like a complete and total recession. There's been tons of studies like from the Economic Policy Institute that shows that like companies like Tesla, companies from like Silicon Valley, they engaged in mass firing of workers.
I think it's important. Yeah, you mentioned Tesla. I lost my check mark for talking about the Indian immigrants who are getting the H-1 visas. So it's not just the illegals that come in for the low wage work. They're also now going after the high paying American jobs.
Yes.
That's really crucial. And it's funny. He's like, from where? You knew the study names. He didn't expect you. These guys are professional debaters. You're 19. He thinks, oh, I'm able to smoke them with all these, oh, where's the studies? And you hit that. All right, you can play it.
35,000, but then they hired around 12,000 H-1B visas, and it's kind of just standard economic thinking.
It's not standard economic thinking. The vast majority of economists and economic studies suggest that there is a negligible, if no impact on wages over time.
That's not
immigrants. In fact, your colleague mentioned earlier construction. There is actually evidence in construction. Yes,
pause it right there. You notice he just said it has a negligible effect on wages, and then you mentioned construction. Well, it does actually affect construction. Well, why does it hurt construction specifically? Because that's where they go. Yeah. If you're looking at industries where immigrants don't go into, well, then obviously, yes, they're not going to affect those industries. They're not there.
He'll say, oh, it shows it doesn't affect these industries. You're taking industries they're not even in.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Construction, like you said, I did that kid growing up. And, the podcast I said earlier, I was talking about, I had a friend talking about he didn't want his kid to do construction because no one speaks English. That's a very fair argument. Plus the wages are low. So it's literally a whole cruise, no one speaking English. I wouldn't want to put my kid there.
Yeah. And I brought up Silicon Valley early in the discussion. 3/5 of software developers in Silicon Valley are foreign born. 3/5 of them.
Wow, these are high paying jobs.
These are very good jobs that Americans go. This isn't like construction to where like you graduate high school or maybe you dropped out of college and that's what you go do. These are people spend 4 or more years of their life in university to go into debt to go into these industries, and they're the ones being replaced now by H-1B visas.
Handing our best jobs to foreigners. And I've heard, I don't work in the industry, so I can't say, but heard for 3 people now. A lot of the Indian people, they get in charge. They only hire and promote their own.
That's what yes, absolutely true. And they're broken English. They don't respect our customs. They're very rude, things of this nature that a study can't even take an account to that type of stuff about like, what is the change in the day-to-day life of the firm that you're working at when all these people come? You can't even account for that. But if you talk to these people and how much they're, working at the firm changed when they started bringing all these immigrants in, it's no question that it's worse. You're having to talk to people who barely understand what they're saying because of their accent.
No, I know people I know there, they say they really don't like it. A lot of times they're liberals, so they're scared to speak against it, but they say they're handed all the work, they're not promoted, and these guys just sit around and do nothing. Anyways, let's go ahead and play it.
some industries, in some areas, there is an impact, but overall, no. In fact, a study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that migrants since 1965 have raised wages and raised innovation.
Who's that by?
National Bureau for Economic Research.
No, hold on. That's where you publish studies. I'm asking.
Yes, I didn't memorize the names of the authors.
Yeah, I know you didn't. Right?
Could you give me the authors you've got?
Yeah, hold on. The study you're talking about is from Giovanni Perry, and what he did is he didn't account for aggregation issues, nor did
The
he.
vast majority of studies.
Let me speak,
please.
Yeah, thank you. Right. So listen, he didn't account for aggregation issues, right? And when you look at like the spatial approaches, what all these economists use, you're not accounting for the fact that when immigrants come into an area, natives leave. If you look at an occupational approach,
That's a great
look at
point.
these
You get
firms
these areas, too many of them come in, and it causes people to leave. So yeah, the wages go down to everyone.
Right. What I was mentioning there, and it's kind of like what we just talked about, is that a lot of these studies, they only look at like the specific geographic area that immigrants go into. That's what I meant by aggregation issues is immigrants aggregate and they only go into very specific industries. If you're looking at just like an area that immigrants go into, you can't capture that. But if you go occupation by occupation and you look at where are these specific industries immigrants go into, and once you look at that across the board, wages go down. And that's what the argument was about. The study that he mentioned, which he didn't know the author, he just said some stuff about it, probably didn't know it. The studies that he's mentioning, by and large, only come from like one or two specific economists, and they use a metric or a methodology where you can't really capture what's actually happening. And once you adjust for that a little bit, like the studies I was mentioning, then you do see across the board decreases in wages. You also have to ask, okay, and you can think common sense a little bit. If it doesn't bring wages down and increases the profits for big businesses, why do they lobby so much for it? What would be the point of it?
Clearly, it's a lie. That's why these big businesses. Well, also, who's funding these studies? That's very crucial. A lot of times, the studies might be being funded by the very businesses that want all the cheap labor.
Right, 100%. 100%. Immigration's going into, like Kim ETAL 2013 did. You find a net negative impact when there's a 10% increase of immigration. You find around a 0.5% decline in wages when it comes to the specific occupations they're going to.
So
all your studies are flawed.
So 0.5%. Weigh that up against what I just mentioned from the Congressional Budget Office, which is a massive boost in GDP per head, which you're not counting for. Massive increase in tax revenue. Immigrants actually funding the deficits and debts by paying way more in taxes.
Hey guys, I'm demonetized everywhere. So if you want to support me and the podcast, go to fightbackpodcast.com and you can buy some cool merch like the shirt I'm wearing now. Hey guys, I want to introduce you to one of our sponsors, Antelope Hill Publishing. Antelope Hill publishes books such as Culture of Critique by Dr. Kevin McDonald, who's someone I've interviewed on my show. He talks about the evolutionary strategy of the chosen people. So go to antelopehillpublishing.com and use promo code FIGHTBACK to support the podcast and get a discount. That's antelopehillpublishing.com and promo code FIGHTBACK. As a whole, immigrants did not add more. There may be like certain immigrated groups, maybe a few of them that do, but as a whole, they definitely do not.
Well, they pay more in taxes than the average American because you have to think of how big of deficits Black people and Hispanics are in. That's not accounting for that. If you break it down by race, if you just look, who pays more in taxes compares to what they bring out, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian. Black people and Hispanic people are in deficits. White people and Asians are in surpluses. But because of how big the deficits that Black and Hispanic people are in, and you put those all together to say the average American, and then you compare them to immigrants, immigrants do pay more, but we're not arguing. I don't want that's not the point. Like, we're
not trying to give away our best jobs. So
that's not the
Asian
point.
Immigrants probably do come over, don't cause a lot of problems, make good money, but should we be handing our best jobs to foreign-born people? I would say no.
Also, who cares? Like, the solution to, if we're deficit spending a lot and you think that's a problem because we're going into like debt, there's two things that you can do there. Number one, you can either increase taxes on these billionaires that don't fucking do anything at all, or you can stop spending as much. The solution is not to bring in a bunch of people to replace and compete with our people so they can pay taxes. They don't make that much money. They don't pay that much taxes in the first place. And at the beginning, I mentioned how the one study said that like every time there's a 10% increase, there's a 0.5% decrease. And he goes, a 0.5% decrease, that's not that big of a deal. Yeah, okay. But there's not just a 10% increase in the foreign-born population. Like I said earlier, like 3/5 of Silicon Valley, of like 40% of construction. There's no telling how many illegals are in like how much is it? That's probably a majority. So what you're seeing there, that is, and then like I said, that's hourly wages. Imagine how much that accumulates over a yearly salary. You're looking at losses of thousands of dollars in a yearly salary.
Lots of people are living very close. You know, I remember the government was shut down. I rented a house to a lady. She wasn't getting like some of the food assistance, and she asked her if she could have like $50 off rent. I'm like, to me, that's like nothing. I let her just, I took 100 off and just kept it off because I realized if you're struggling that bad that she's having a hard time feeding her kid, like it's better just to give her a little bit of assistance off. But these margins are crucial to a lot of people.
No, that's precisely right. And also, there's no reason to do that in the first. Like, you got to remember, this is a policy decision. We have decided that we want to bring in more people. And what's the reason? Ultimately, Mehdi's position here is that he thinks Americans are lazy and don't want to do jobs that other people can do. That's his position. And he also thinks that it is a good thing that the economy gets bigger because profit margins go up because they have to pay their workers less.
Stocks and profit margins. They don't care about the individual.
They don't give a shit about that. No.
Let's go ahead, play it.
Wages is, I'm in a room full of, I don't know what to call you anymore, conservatives, Republicans, fascists, I don't know. One of you has proudly said that. One of us proudly, oh yeah, correct. I'm in a room full of correct people, but do any of you actually care about wages? Because
for example, I actually do, right?
Do you support raising the minimum wage?
Absolutely, and you can't do that when you're bringing all these people coming into your country.
The reason
Yes, it is.
So quick, not just wages, there's multiple factors like housing.
Yeah.
Like, how are you? The more people you bring in, the less housing. There's this housing crisis where people your age can't afford homes, and you won't be able to for a while. And Trump's too worried about like, oh, well, we need to keep the worth in your house. I own my house. It doesn't matter to me if my home goes down a little bit. You know, it's not that big of a deal if you own your home and you live there. But they only care about, oh, you want your wealth to be in your home so you can brag that you have this high net worth. It's retarded.
And there's also other things I don't even get to talk about, even putting the economy aside. Like, what about crime? What about social cohesion? What do these people even believe in? Are they compatible with our culture and our civilization? In many, many instances, the answer is no. And they do commit more crime. They do cause social cohesion issues. They make it to where you don't want to live in a neighborhood that's overwhelmingly them. That's something that can't be captured in an economic index. You can't capture that with GDP. You know,
and I agree. I think anytime there's immigration, it needs to be very slow. I'm not like 100% against all immigration, but there's clearly been way too much. It needs to be at least temporarily paused. People always need to come in slowly so you become Americans. If you come in, you stay all in your same group, you don't become Americans. There's places in California, I go there, no one's speaking English. There's places like, I'm sure all over the country, but I used to live in California, go to these towns like, oh, you can't go in, people don't understand me. I'm speaking in English.
What I think the policy should be, it's pretty simple. What it should be is we have a moratorium, temporary one, we'll say for about 10 to 20 years. And then what we go back to is what happened before the Hart-Celler Act, which was a national quota system where we put specific, say, okay, we'll only bring in 100,000 from Europe, and then we'll only bring in 50,000 from, and you put a number on specific countries that you bring in instead of doing what we do now, which is an employment based system based on visas. No, we're not going to, that's done with now.
No, and I agree. And I think that they say it's the worst thing if you want the country to mostly stay white. I think most people, including non-white people, prefer the country as majority white.
Why would they come here if they didn't want that? Why would they come to a majority white country if they wanted it to turn into, they're fleeing their country. Why would they want the country they're coming to turn into the country that they're leaving?
Most people don't. You know, I know a lot of Mexicans that were born here living in California. None of them want the immigrants to. They don't want America to turn into Mexico. That's why they're here. So.
That's right.
You think Republican politicians don't vote for an increase in minimum wage because they're worried about immigration?
Did I say I voted Republican? Did I say I voted Republican?
Well, I'm in a show that was called 25 Far-Right Republicans.
That doesn't mean I'm going to support every single Republican candidate.
So you and I, So you and I, let's agree. We both support raising the minimum wage. Yes, 100%. $7.25 since 2009. It's lost 30% of its value. If you care about wages, we should be raising the minimum wage in this country. Not
see how that's a huge pivot. Why are we talking about the minimum wage? How are you going to say companies you must raise your minimum wage to $15, $20 an hour, whatever, which I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
But you can't do that when you're also massively increasing the labor force. Now you're forcing these people to hire more people plus pay them so much money. The reason why they're bringing these people into the first place is so they don't have to pay them that much money.
Yeah, they're going to have to pay these wages. There's not tons of workers, so there's not even going to like.
So why would you raise the minimum wage? You can't you can't do the same thing. So, like, for example, look, think of like the Nordic countries. They have very high unionization rates. They have very low inequality. They have very high wages. They have extremely low immigration. That's because they know if you bring in all these immigrants, you can't have like this type of socialist system.
You can't do both.
You can't do both at the same. And this is recognized by everybody. That's why so many of the socialist countries have very, very closed borders. That's why so many of the free market capitalist people, think of someone like Milton Friedman and guys like that, advocated for a very open border system.
Yeah.
You can't do both at the same time.
Bernie Sanders used to be a huge closed border guy.
He said open borders was a Koch brothers policy,
which is true. And
totally true.
I think Sweden actually has brought in a lot more immigrants and has caused problems.
They have, but countries like Denmark and Norway.
Yeah.
They're very, very closed off.
No, that's true. And they have less problems. And there are some of these countries where they make high wages, but everything's so expensive. It's not really, $70,000, $80,000, nothing in those countries because everything's so expensive.
Yeah, I think you can fix that type of stuff though, right? So like, for example, what you do is, okay, we're paying so many more people so much money for this. How can we, and that's because, okay, the business needs to earn a profit. And so they have to increase the prices of their goods because they're paying labor. So, well, how come the government can't just come in and mediate that? Be like, okay, we'll give you since you are now hiring American workers and paying them much better wages, we will reward you with tax cuts or tax credits and things like that. And so that takes the burden off you having to now raise your prices, and that affects the consumer. You mediate.
We could easily do like all of our money goes towards wars in Israel and stuff. I wouldn't mind helping my fellow Americans out a little bit, but that's where none of our tax dollars go.
No, they go to nonsensical welfare policies and wars, and that doesn't need to. We need to go away with that. And also, I'm of the opinion that I don't think it matters that much how much money you spend. You can always mediate these things. It doesn't really matter that much. They're going for good, beneficial things. These things mostly pay for themselves. Like, for example, think of countries that have free healthcare, right? Universal free healthcare. They spend about 10% of their GDP on healthcare. We spend 12%.
And we get nothing. I think we have some of the worst healthcare in the world. That's when we've been brainwashed into being like, oh, you want free healthcare? You're a communist.
I do want free. Why can't
I do too. I think it's like you shouldn't have to have a GoFundMe because your kid has cancer.
Almost every industrialized country in the world has free healthcare.
Everyone does. I think we're the only one that doesn't. It's like we've been brainwashed to think it's a bad thing having free healthcare.
The type of system that we do have is this. There's this middleman called insurance that gets bloated with government subsidies that, yes, the tax dollars are paying for. And it's but the consumer also has to pay for it while they're getting subsidies from the government. And it ends up the government is spending more on healthcare than these countries with free healthcare do. And the consumer doesn't even get fucking,
you nailed it. Still get fucked. It's such a joke how people like don't want free healthcare when we could have it for cheaper than we currently pay. And it could be our healthcare sucks here unless it's like really, really rich, paying for the best doctors. We do have some great doctors, but as a whole, it's completely a joke.
I agree.
We'll play this.
Who aren't the cause of low wages in the country. You know who's causing low wages? Billionaires, millionaires.
And how they doing?
Won't pay fair wages to their wages, regardless of whether you are an immigrant or a native.
I get the monologue right now. Let me respond.
You had one. You had one.
No,
you don't want to pay, but you have no choice.
Yeah, and your study like sucked that you didn't even know who wrote it, right? So like, let's get back to the point.
Because I don't need to.
There it goes again.
Yeah, let's hear it. The majority of studies say that wages are not impacted.
The majority of your studies are flawed. That's what I'm telling you.
Not my studies.
Right.
Neither of us are economists. It's the economist studies.
Don't assume who I am.
Are you an economist?
I could be.
But are you?
I could be.
Are you?
I'm not going to tell you.
Are you?
I'm going to major in economics.
Are you an economist?
No, not right now.
Okay, so when I said neither is economist, I was correct.
Just don't assume.
To use your favorite word.
Red flags are coming up. Let me get to the
great. But
so when you talk about the CBO, one thing you're not accounting for here is that they're assuming an equilibrium, right? Do you know what that means? You shouldn't make these type of assumptions. You said earlier that unemployment.
Do I know what it means? I thought we're not doing assumptions.
Okay, hold on. You mentioned we were like at 4.2% unemployment. Yeah, that's counting people who have part-time jobs. That's counting poverty wages. Yeah,
I'm against poverty wages.
You won't let me
again.
Yes, if you go to like the Lookwood Institute, they calculated a way where it's like functional unemployment. Okay, if you account for things like just people who make around $25,000 a year, people who have fallen out of the labor market, people who only work part-time, if you count all of those people together, and then add on the unemployment, that's around 25% of the population. So when you go, we don't have jobs, we don't have people to do this, and that, and the other. No, yes, we do. Okay, we don't have a labor shortage. We have a good job shortage. And when you keep bringing these people in, and they're taking those jobs.
The good job shortage is the fault of big firms, employees. I'm an employee. I can say that.
The immigrants.
Who hires the immigrants?
Yeah,
Employers.
exactly. So
But
when
that's
you,
not
when
the
you bring
cause.
up these big firms,
Okay, so
that's
let me
the
ask you a question.
Instead of, going and harassing the people, they could show up and go after the businesses, but they'll never do that.
Well, all you would have to do is say, if you get caught hiring an illegal immigrant, we're just going to seize your assets. We're going to nationalize your business. We're going to seize your assets, and we're going to throw your ass in prison for 15 to 10 years. That would, for the most part, solve the issue. Like that would severe, because if you get caught hiring an immigrant, because you're doing it to make more money with your business, you're not going to have a business anymore. But they're extremely lax on these people that get caught hiring illegals, which is a big reason why there's such a huge incentive to bring illegals in the first place. There's almost no punishment for it.
Yeah, they almost never go after the business, right? I think they almost always go after we're going to go after them, but they don't actually go after them.
No, they go and they do shows like they did, and they put on these performances in like Minnesota where they go, door to door. Probably the most inefficient way you could possibly try to do a mass deportation.
Illegals in here.
Yeah, like it's fucking ridiculous. And the numbers from ICE are so bad, they aren't even releasing them anymore. That's how bad it is. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, and people still believe Trump's doing something.
And that, right?
So let me ask you a question. If you got rid of all immigrants coming in tomorrow, moratorium, you think that Republicans and employers of big firms would suddenly raise all the wages?
You notice
That's
how
what
you
you
didn't answer
believe.
what I said. You notice how it was a complete.
That's what you believe. That's what you believe. Is that what you? My assumption.
Slowly.
Do you believe that wages? I'm just wondering how naive you are. You believe that the 1% will raise wages in the federal wage
They will
if
be
we
forced
stop
to.
immigration?
They will be forced to.
to
When you increase labor's relationship to capital, okay, and you give labor more bargaining power because you're tightening the supply of labor.
Understanding of economics because you're
Okay, explain I'm wrong.
I mean, it seems like common sense what you're arguing, but it's like they act like it's not. But if there's less people here, they're going to have to lower the wages. Same thing with like housing has to go down if there's less people buying and looking for housing, looking to rent.
It's the same logic that labor unions have. The reason why you want labor unions is so the labor is more powerful than capital, and there's a tightness of it because they're all in this big union, and they can threaten to stop working, right, and cause production problems so that firms will increase their wages. The exact same logic, and leftists love labor unions, but for some reason they also love immigrants. These two things, like I said, these two things cannot be reconciled with each other.
Yeah. See, if I'm running a construction business, I'm going to have to raise my wage. If I can go out and get a bunch of cheap Mexicans, I can do that. But if I can't do that, well, I guess I have to pay you a little bit better.
That's exactly it.
Because you're ignoring the fact that when immigrants come into an area, they spend money. They create jobs.
About 1/5 of their monthly income leaves the country.
That's a good thing also because you don't like USA foreign aid. So this is the point. They create
Don't
jobs. They
assume
came
that.
into this country. So far, every one of my assumptions about you has been correct. But listen to me. I am an immigrant. I'm speaking from personal experience.
Get the hell out.
I don't even like. I should get the hell out.
Yes.
Why?
I don't want you here.
Why?
Because you come here and say all this bullshit
Why?
about how Americans are lazy.
Why?
You push your left
I
wing
never said
politics.
Americans are
I don't know
lazy.
why you say
I never
this.
said Americans
Yes,
are
you
lazy.
do.
This
You're
person
saying
attacking
immigrants
people
have to
as
come
you.
into this country so they can do jobs that we don't want to do. That's exactly what you said.
When did I
Oh,
say it?
really?
When did I say it?
So why do we?
YouTube. Guys watching on YouTube, rewind to the time where I said
What else would we
immigrants.
possibly be saying, though? If you want more people to come into the country to do jobs, the conclusion must be that we don't have people in this country to do the jobs. It's the only thing that could possibly follow from that.
No, it's true. Also, it's a little off subject, but what happened to all the environmental groups that wanted less people? They're just silent with immigrants. More people, like they mess up our forests, like everything. They cause problems.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. No one says anything about that. And some of these countries that these immigrants are coming into,
Guilty, yeah.
And they do the same shit here, right?
Well, right there, yeah. I
Or
was
not the same shit because there's like regulations, but a lot of the neighborhoods, they're not clean, they're not good, and it's like the left has been so contradictory on this issue. It's horrible.
Yeah, where I'm from, the cartels came in, they bottled the forest for the weed industry, they cut it down, they put all kinds of disgusting like chemicals that would flooded into the water, caused all kinds of problems, but the cops wouldn't do anything about it.
Doing jobs we don't want to do. When did I say those words? Words that came out of my mouth.
Okay, so why do we have to bring in immigrants to the
friend.
country if we have people who are going to do the jobs?
Pause. You've been voted
I
out.
got so mad when I told him to get out of the country,
That
man.
was funny.
Well, he is I don't like him, like he is a bad person. He went you because he's supposed to be. If you don't know the lore behind this guy, I guess I'll explain it.
Yeah, I've seen him, but I don't know much about him.
So he used to be, he's doing like this progressive shit now. He's doing lobbying for the Democrats, essentially. He used to be a fanatic Muslim. And there's clips of him from more than longer than a decade ago, probably 14, 15 years ago, where he's calling like homosexuals dogs and atheists are infidels. Yeah, that's the type of shit he was doing. And he had this rebrand of he's a progressive and a liberal and a Democrat, and he was working for MSNBC. Well, when October 7th happened, MSNBC fired basically every Muslim that worked for them,
which is crazy.
Including
imagine if someone fired every Jew.
Right. And I don't think that should have happened, right? Because obviously the reason why they did that is because a lot of these Muslims have pro-Palestinian sentiment. We do not need them commenting and doing stuff like that. So we kind of just have to get rid of them. So what this fucker's been doing is just basically going on essentially what is an apology tour, trying to get back his spot with mainstream media. And what that's included is telling people who have pro-Palestinian sentiment that they can't support Tucker Carlson. They can't support Marjorie Taylor Greene. You can't support Thomas Massey because they're right wingers and they actually really don't care and they have alternative motives. And you need to stick with your, own, you should just be with Muslims and leftists, and that these right wingers who hate Israel, you can't deal with them. So he acts as a gatekeeper.
So he's really not trying to help the issue, because obviously you'd all come together, right, left, at least in this one issue. You don't have to agree on everything, but if you all agree in this one issue, why not unite and try to fight this one issue? But people that won't do that, it shows they don't really care. He's just a grifter. And who else wants illegal immigrants? The same people.
It's the same people. People try to create this binary of where it's like you have like people who are pro-war, and then you have people who are open borders, right? You see people create that dialectic all the time. Actually, the same people who want the wars want the open borders. Almost unanimously. Like,
what do they say every single time? It's
the same, but it's literally the exact same people. Like the neocons were pro-open borders. Like the people who created the visa system, that was 1990. That's Bush. That's George H.W. Bush. George H.W. Bush created the visa system that is essentially responsible for the replacement of white people in the country. The visa system. Bush Senior, yes.
So he was one of the first big pushers of all this.
Yeah, he signed into law the visa system, which created the H-1B visas and created the employment-based immigration system. And the Jews who are involved in Bush Senior's administration, like Wolfowitz, all these guys are neocons and were responsible for the Iraq War. So the people who are pushing, and a lot of people don't know that either, Republicans have been some of the biggest open border advocates.
Yeah, it's so interesting because everyone's like, oh, the Republicans are better than immigrants. Maybe they're a tiny bit better, but a lot of it is just they'll pretend like they are, but they're secretly not at all.
The largest amnesty bill that was ever passed in this country's history was from Reagan. The bill that was responsible for the explosion of the foreign-born population was Bush. It is the Republicans and also the Democrats, for example. It was Obama that overthrew Gaddafi. But if you look at, like, for example, Iraq, that caused a refugee crisis, that was Republicans. Trump completely has failed to do any type of mass deportations. And also, I mean, there was
build the wall. Like,
or build the wall.
Even talking about that. What happened to that big, beautiful wall he was going to build?
Yeah, you don't hear about that anymore.
They said it was too expensive, wasn't it? Like $20 billion or something. And how much money we sent to Israel?
Wasn't that fucking? And also, it paid for itself because if more people would be making more money, they have more money to pay in taxes, right? So all the money you would have spent for the wall, it probably would have, there would have been a return on that investment.
Spending money on these immigrants is like that's not even a secret. What last thing with the show, is it like weird having such a slow don't know how long you have. It's so hard to get an argument in.
You got to just be like real, because I've already made my mind up what I'm going to say. I'm going to be like, okay, if he says it's good for the economy, I'm going to bring up this. I know the talking points, so I'll have this, and respond to. If he wanted to say something besides the economy, I would go, okay, we got crime, we have social cohesion, we have these people have different values, they seek different ends than normal citizens. We talk about whatever you want to, because it is just such a slam dunk issue. And that's why like Trump got elected, because of how bad immigration system was.
Literally, I voted for him in the first term. That is why. And there's a couple reasons. One, I was in San Francisco and it pissed off the liberals so bad. So it was just funny. Like, Trump used to be funny. He's lost the humor. I wanted less immigrants. What else did he run on?
Anti-war. He was anti-war.
That was one of I've always been anti-war. That was one of the, pro-free free speech, anti-war. He's going to build the wall, and he pissed off liberals. I'm like, okay, I'll vote for this guy.
He had three main policies, and it was stuff that people had really never heard of before, but everyone agreed. And it was, we need to deport illegals and shut the border. We need to stop these forever wars, and we need to stop free trade to bring back good manufacturing jobs. That was his three main things, and he won on that line. And he did the exact fucking opposite of all three of those.
That's what's crazy, that anyone that could support him before and support him now. I get it. If you're never a Trumper, now you support him because he's completely flip-flopped in everything he ran on. But the people that supported him before and now, they're just like, they might as well support the Kim Kardashian. They're celebrity worshipers.
Well, here's the thing: is a lot of people, like, who are like the main faces of MAGA today.
Mark Levine.
Well, here's the thing: all those people were previously never Trumpers. The Jews were legitimately
Ben Shapiro,
Rubio, Vance, Levin. I can Hannity. I can name. I don't know about Laura. Laura Loomer might have been like the only Jew that was like a true believer. She might have been like a true believer. But Trump always had Jews in his camp. He always had Kushner. He had Cohen before him. He had Adelson. He always had Jews in his camp. And I've always been of the opinion that Trump was always from the get-go.
He was always very tied in with these.
He was always an op. He was not
very tied in with the Jewish elite. Now, however, he's gotten worse the second term, but like he moved the embassy to Jerusalem.
He ripped up the Obama nuclear deal and put sanctions on Iran the first time. He bombed Syria. He continued the bombing of Yemen. I'm sure I can name some other.
He's clearly worse the second term than the first term, in your opinion. In my opinion, it is.
100%. I agree that it's worse, and the reason why, but
it was bad the first time. I agree with that. And a lot of people don't realize that. They just try to blame it all on this term he got.
They try to blame it on Congress. They try to blame all this other stuff. But like, here's the thing: is that the only way people could have advocated for Trump 2.0 the second term is to pretend that the first term didn't happen. And how many people got betrayed by the first term?
Yeah.
You had more wars. He didn't do anything. Actually, there was a surge of illegal immigrants in 2018 to 2019, like a huge surge. And
COVID lockdowns and vaccines.
Right. And more deindustrialization. Manufacturing jobs never came back. So nothing happened the first time. In fact, things did get worse. And so the only way people could advocate him for the second time is just to pretend these things didn't happen.
Yeah.
And the only reason he was allowed to, because people don't win, at random, they're allowed to win. If you're not allowed to win, but you still have a popular backing, stuff like Massey happens to where the fucking media, guns, and all the Jewish money just pours into your opposition.
Tens of millions, and who knows if it's even rigged with all the mail-in ballots. Clearly, they got to ban mail-in ballots.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Yeah. But you're not you don't win. You're allowed to win. And the only reason Trump was allowed to win was because October 7th happened. People started hating Israel, and Trump was basically going to be the guy who took all the flack and putting the hammer down.
Yeah.
That's why so many of these Jews, people don't remember, there were lifetime liberal Jews who were big backers of Trump, Bill Ackman.
People should have noticed that type of stuff when all the worst people started supporting him before the term. That's why I knew he was going to win too. When you have Ackman, all these guys that are Israel only. Zuckerberg. That's a good one. He went on Joe Rogan and he had the chain. He's like, "What's up, guys? I'm one of the bros." It looked like a lizard trying to pretend like he was human.
But Zuckerberg backed him, and Facebook is extremely liberal.
Yeah.
So it's why did they allow this shift, this vibe to happen? It's because they knew Trump wasn't going to do anything that would damage their interests, and allowing him to get back onto the scene would let them do what they've always wanted to do, which is what they call it, cut off the head of the snake. It was to bomb Iran. That was all roads lead back to Tehran, lead back to Persia. And that's the only reason why Trump was allowed to come back in.
Yeah, his biggest supporters are the worst Jewish billionaires and podcasters.
And homos like Peter Thiel.
Yeah, that's Palantir.
And Karp, Karp's Jewish. So many of these guys. I mean, you go and you look at who are Trump's backers. It's Adelson. It's Jeffrey Yaz. It's Ackman. It's these people.
He was selected by the Jewish billionaires.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, before we wrap, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter. The ad is Doomernat22. I go by Doomernat. And then on Substack, YouTube, and Rumble, you can find my podcast, Eviction Notice.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
As many of you know, I have many controversial guests, so that comes at a cost of being demonetized everywhere. So if you want to support the program, go to fightbackpodcast.com, and I have all kinds of merch on there, whether it's jiu-jitsu, fighting, political, and other accessories. And thanks for the support.